Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. I'm so happy to see that so many of you has managed to join already. We'll just give people a few more seconds to join in so that everybody is settled. And in the meantime, I'll just go ahead and present the platform. There are a few functions and features that's quite nice to know. In the bottom right corner, you will find the chat where you can share your thoughts throughout the webinar. We'd love for you to write as much as you want in there. Starting off, maybe just writing where you're checking in from. I'm checking in from Sweden. Dani and Fiona, who is patiently waiting to start speaking, is checking in from Austria. So please share. You're also able to write questions in the question tab. It's also in the right bottom corner, and the question goes only to me, Fiona, and Dani, whereas the chat will go to everyone joining in the webinar. And next to the question tab, you also have the emoji tab, which is so fun, where you can post your reactions to what we're speaking about and just bringing some good energy now that we're being online and not face-to-face. I think, checking in from Berlin, that's nice. I think we seem to have as much people as expected, so let's go. Today we're going to talk about internal adoption of a CLM. So meaning, how do you get started with implementation? How do you get other departments involved in the rollout of a CLM? And how do you keep up the good work? Because that can be a challenge when you're coming with a new system to your organization and you're used to working in your old ways. My name is Jenny, and I am first and foremost your host today, but I am also the legal and compliance manager at Precisely. And to speak about this interesting topic, we have the great pleasure to welcome Fiona Konetzky, who is the VP of Legal and Compliance, and Dani Manfreda, who is the Deputy Head of Legal and Compliance at Adverity. For those of you who don't know Adverity already, they are a marketing analytics SaaS provider, and of course also a beloved customer of ours. So I feel like it's time for me to stop talking and let Fiona and Dani in. If there's anything you would like to share with the people joining, please go ahead. Otherwise, I'll jump into the questions.
Sure. Hi, Jenny. Thanks for having us. And yeah, hi to everyone else. My name is Fiona, as said. I'm part of Adverity since 3.5 years. I had the honor to build this legal and compliance department that years ago. And happy to be here to talk about CLM systems today.
Hi, everyone, also from my side. So my name is Dani. I joined Adverity in January 2021 and started as legal specialist, then heading legal ops team. And now my role at Adverity is Deputy Head of Legal and Compliance.
So great.
We're ready to go.
Me too. So my first question, starting off, what was your internal process before choosing a CLM? Like, was there any internal resistance to getting this new tool into place, or any specific concerns within your colleagues, or fears even? And how did you manage to overcome those?
Yeah, well, back then, I realized quite soon that I need a CLM system. I was the only legal counsel back then. And so we started off with a different tool, as you know, Jenny, which we used for a year. And it was a complete catastrophe. So I can definitely tell about the don'ts when implementing a CLM. So I was completely focused when I first implemented a contract management tool on my needs, because I was in need. I was the only one. So I was just busted with work and did not really involve my colleagues from other teams. I had some conversations with sales ops back then, but did not really involve them heavily into the process, which resulted in having a tool that was really not fit for our purpose. And we realized quite soon that we need to change, and I need to implement another tool, which was then luckily Precisely. So after a year, we switched those tools. And when I implemented the second tool, I had a completely different approach. I learned from my mistakes. So what I did was I sent out a questionnaire to the user types, HR, sales, business development, whoever used the previous tool, asked for the big pros and cons, and taking those with me when searching for the new tool. And yeah, I would definitely recommend everyone consulting with their stakeholders. Of course, I think it's the main tool for a legal department, which makes our lives easier, which is the purpose of it. But also, you will realize soon, if you do not involve the right stakeholders, you will get your bill afterwards. So it's definitely worth having a chat and conversation with them. What are their needs and what do they expect from CLM? And when you have them on board and they see that you're also considering their opinion, then it's also easier to sell it to the rest of the users or your C-level or whoever, taking into account the bigger picture, not only the legal needs.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of key. Like, it's a tool for legal, but it's also for the other departments to use and kind of help legal help other departments. So everybody needs to be on board and wanting to use the tool to make it successful.
Yeah, that's right. So it's not only my team using it on a daily basis, it's also heavily our sales team, business development, finance, HR, marketing, so many others. So yeah. That's important.
And it kind of already jumped into my second question. So today you're heavy users of Precisely, as said, but which department was the first one you started with? And in bringing on new departments, how did you kind of share the knowledge between the departments, or, make people aware of or know how to use the platform?
So yeah, I can take this one. So yeah, I think the first department which made sense for us to focus on was our sales team or our commercial teams who are dealing with customer contracts, because of course we wanted to prioritize those at first. So the rollout started with them, but then we soon realized that we can use Precisely also, of course, with other types of contracts with other departments. So this is how we decided to roll it out also to other teams. And yes, Fiona mentioned, basically the whole company or the stakeholders from all the departments in the company are today using Precisely in some way or the other. So if we talk about marketing contracts or business development, account management, also supplier contracts, we are now also processing through Precisely. So all the different teams have access to the tool. And the onboarding or how we train those people, we had different approaches. We started with calls and just introducing the tool, how it works. We also created a user guide where we described the different steps that users need to follow in order to successfully generate a contract in Precisely, or review a contract, or approve it. Then, down the road, we went, we did an extra step. We created short customized videos, 1 minute, 2 minutes long, that users can quickly, watch and have access to that in case they're not sure how to do something in Precisely. And we tailored all those materials to our needs and the way we are using Precisely. So legal ops worked on those materials. And today, it's really, really crucial for us to have that, because when we have new people joining, we basically just share the links to all those materials that we prepared, and people can actually onboard on their own. But if there are any specific questions on how to use Precisely or about a specific function within the tool, then of course legal ops is there to help and support those users.
Yeah. And I think that's what we see with our customers as well, that it's kind of differs. Some would reach out to us and want us to onboard new users, but also that some of our customers maybe develop their own internal material that's more customized to exactly how you're working and the stakeholders and so on, because you, of course, know your process in detail better. But then, of course, we have some great knowledge and tips and tricks to share as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So also those materials were in close collaboration also with Precisely. So we already had a look at the materials that are available in the help center. And then we found a solution that works best for our company. Yeah,
and it seems to be working perfectly fine. So great job. I also suspect that, of course, you had a lot of contracts and documents within your organization before Precisely happened. You mentioned you even had another system. At what point did you decide to import all of your legacy contracts to Precisely, and how did you go around it, and what benefits do you see from having it there?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So I had a look at multiple CLM solutions when I searched for my second provider. luckily I ended up with Precisely, and one of the main reasons was also like the archive and all the features and metadata and reporting features that are available, which I haven't seen with others. So it was quite clear to me that at some point I would definitely want to go live and bringing all existing contracts from a normal drive or storage to Precisely. The reason for that is that we're able to add metadata to contracts already signed. So even if they're not have been processed via Precisely or CLM, we can still use all the data available, which we could not do by just having it stored on the drive. Also, the metadata allows us to create reports, to add reminders, and to really involve the contract owner for our suppliers, for example, to have better overview. So this is really something we realized quite early, but this is a project on its own. I think later we will also have the chance to talk quickly about OKRs. So actually the idea was there for a long time. This quarter, we found some time and dedicated some time to bring all of our existing supplier agreements onto Precisely and add all the metadata, define metadata for them, add reminders, and make it available to our business users and stakeholders via the tool. So this is really great. And of course, the aim is to have one single source of truth. So we start now with one contract type, figuring out how, like, what's the business users' feedback on that, how we're working with it, what are the benefits, what we could maybe change. And then the plan is to do so for all old contracts that have been processed outside of Precisely and to bring all the contracts to it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's very cool, like being able to, create this one place to find all information. The goal, of course, being maybe like if anyone in the organization asks you, where can I find this? Where do I start this thing? Where does this feel like it's Precisely?
It's Precisely. And also you have like the option for searching for contracts. Now, if you use Google Drive or whatever is your storage system, you can search by a document title and maybe by the owner. But within Precisely, by adding metadata, I could search by so many different filters, like applicable law or contract language, I don't know, whatever it is. So this adds a whole new level, not only for the legal team, but also for the contract owners to make those data available to them. Yeah.
And one big thing, of course, of Precisely, apart from the archive, is templates. How beneficial would you say that it is for you to work with templates, and how do you work with them? What do you do when things change in your templates, or who is responsible for ensuring that everything is up to date?
So templates are, they're crucial for our day-to-day work. Basically, by having templates, we can control or create a safe environment for the users who actually need to draft the contract, for them to be able to go through that process of drafting in a nice, safe, and controlled way, or let's say in a way that we want them to do, to create a contract. And by having that, we ensure that those steps are automated, and it also helps us with focusing on different types of contracts. Like we have contract types that are not so complex, like maybe an NDA, but like customer contracts are quite complex. And by having this as a template, it for sure helps the business. In our company, legal ops is taking care of that. So when we talk about, let's say, commercial contracts, but we also have a people ops team, and they take care of that. So for any HR or employment related contracts, they're in charge of that. So not every department that have access to Precisely is also working with templates, but we have dedicated ops teams that then do that, and that is familiar with how to work with templates, and that they can also then take care of any updates. Then of course a lot of testing before an update goes live, but all in all, templates are really crucial for how we work.
Yeah. And I think that's also a main difference that we see between the customer, which is also always going to depend on your organization, where if maybe legal is responsible for always updating the templates and being the admins or the super user, or if you have maybe department heads in your different departments using it, responsible for updating and making sure it's correct and up to date. So that's also always going to vary, within your organization, what resources do you have and who is responsible at the end of the day.
Exactly. So, I mean, the main responsibility, like I said, lies with the ops teams. But of course, when it comes to the content of the template, an input might be needed from other teams as well. And this is where, we consult with them and make them aware of the changes that we are making. And then once we find, common language, then, we put everything together and then we roll it out.
Yeah. And I think that's what also, and that's a project of mine actually, to finding, okay, this clause is always negotiated, let's change it, because you can kind of keep track of it together with the stakeholders, like they're being frustrated for always negotiating this liability clause. Well, then maybe let's do something about it, because it's taking time. Cool. And Dani, you're a super user today, but I know that when you started at Precisely was already quite implemented when you came on board. How was your training experience when you joined? Like, how did you manage to get up to speed and be the super user that you are today?
Yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, when I joined, I was actually trained by another super user, and she's sitting right next to me. So Fiona was already a Precisely Pro when I joined, so this was really helpful because she could share with me all the tips and tricks how to get onboarded with the tool as fast as possible. When I joined, there was also like a Precisely guide in place, which covered the basic functions. I got familiar then also by checking Precisely website or the help articles that you had available. But I would also like to mention here the chat function that you have in the tool. I think this is really, really helpful. Like whenever there was an issue, I was not sure how to do something, I was always able to reach out to your support team, and like the response time was like really excellent. Like we got our responses immediately, and that's how we were able to continue to work in the tool successfully. But at the end of the day, I think it's just like how you become a super user is just by using the tool on a daily basis, like heavily just working in the tool. And by doing that, you discover more and more. And at one point, everything, it's really easy to do, and you can consider yourself a super user. So I would say at the end of the day, it's you need to use the tool, and that's how you become a super user.
Yeah, and I guess that's the key to everything when you're trying to learn something new. Like you have to actually be in there, and maybe in the beginning it can feel strange, or it takes longer time because you're not used to clicking on these buttons or finding your way around it. But when you're in there and you've learned it, then it's more fun and of course easier. Okay, so results and benefits. I mean, I know we've been talking about this before, so I know a little bit, but what is the best thing in getting your entire organization to use the platform? What benefits have you seen?
So as said, I think having one single source of truth, whenever someone is talking about, I need a contract, I need a template, whatever, they know they need to go to Precisely. So that's already a great thing. I think it added so much structure to the entire Adverity company, not only to our department. As Dani said, using the templates at such a security level, because we can make sure, or legal, or the respective template owner make sure that always the most recent version is used, that standard members cannot change any text they're not supposed to change, which was also something we didn't have with our previous tools. I think this is key, that only as of a certain seniority level, you're able to change maybe content of the template or the template itself. Also for us, crucial was having the approval lines. So we now have grown to a big company. There are many teams involved before sending out a contract. So we can make sure to have all the approvals collected where needed. And also it's visible. So even 2 months later, if we have a conversation, who approved that clause? Well, I can tell you because it's all visible and Precisely, and that's really, really helpful as well. Now I definitely also, what we didn't have is like really this reporting function. So we're able to extract very precise and customized reports for our customer unit, for example. So I think we bring a lot of added value to the business, not only to our own department, but also we can learn a lot from our reports that we can pull, as you said, which clauses we might need to improve, or what we can add, what's needed. So I think it brings a great structure to the whole business.
Yeah, And I think this is the part where you're really standing out. Like, you really use report function for so many things. And I know we were in Copenhagen for a conference, and you presented all these statistics and numbers, how much you've improved
Exactly.
time between the contracts and all of your goals. And I think that's really impressive, and also great work from your side.
Thank you.
Inspiration.
I can really encourage every legal department to become that transparent and visible, because we're adding a lot of business value, but sometimes legal is always seen as the blocker or not contributing. But if you can show actually how much automation we brought to the company, or how many contracts do not even need legal involvement at all because it's fully automated, this is something where, for me, the future or the ideal legal department should look like, and not be seen as a roadblocker.
Yeah, exactly. And not maybe always being the back office, like, you do the admin stuff or the boring stuff. Actually, we bring value to the company as well.
Yes, Jenny, we do.
Go. Okay, so a little bit on the same topic, but before the webinar, we got a question from one of our newest customer who is thinking about implementing their Precisely rollout into their team's OKRs. And I happen to know that you work with OKRs. So could you tell us a little bit more about that? How did you come around it?
Of course, happy to do so. And I think it's a great idea. So in the company, we work with quarterly OKRs, and I can highly recommend. So beginning of this year, we founded, or together with Dani, we founded the legal ops team. And since then, Precisely always has been an OKR for us with different projects, because there's so much you can do with Precisely. I think you should, break down into pieces what you really want to achieve. So implementing it, first of all, sounds like a great OKR for a quarter, taking consideration what organizations or what stakeholders do we want to bring on board, how do I want to structure it, what templates should be available, who should have access to what, who should be involved in general. So I think it's a very good idea to define internally what they want to achieve, how their ideal CLM looks like after this quarter when Precisely is implemented, and the key results, make them very tangible. And I think it's a very great idea to bring this into OKRs, to have a very smooth and structured implementation of Precisely, because it is a big project. So maybe for some others it sounds small, but implementing a customer lifecycle management tool is a lot of work. And structuring it and keeping track on it definitely made sense for us. So this year as said, we have multiple OKRs in connection with Precisely. Today for this quarter, it's implementing all our supplier contracts into the archive, adding metadata, reminders, whatnot. So they will see there's always a quarter you will find a new OKR where your legal ops team or legal department can benefit from.
That's really nice. And I think that's also like keeping Precisely up to date, or everybody involved. Like, something new is happening, it can always become better, but also starting at what's reasonable. It's not going to be done in 2 weeks and everything is in there. You're going to learn throughout the whole process what do you want, what do you not want, what's working, what's not, and what can we kind of juggle to make it fit better.
Exactly.
I see that we are actually getting some questions in the chat. So if everyone has anything that hasn't asked it, I can remind you about the question tab. We do have one for automation. Do you mostly use what is available in Precisely, or do you also use external tools? So I guess if some other systems to Precisely.
Yeah, so we do use Zapier. Also, we are working with Asana. So, of course, we still have some contracts which are not based on a Precisely template, which might also change in the future. But at the moment, we do have some external contracts that we process at the moment outside of Precisely. And we're collecting all of our tasks in Asana, no matter if they come in via Precisely or via an external source. And Zapier definitely helps us also to automate. But if I was talking about automation, I mainly talked about what we can do together with the approvals and initial approval, or also the rule-based approvals when legal needs to be involved or someone else needs to approve or not. That this really helped my team saving really a lot of time and focusing on other projects or actually legal review for bigger contracts. So this was mainly what I was talking about. But automation is all over the place in our company, luckily.
That's good. it should be in legal as much as in any other department, I think.
I think so too. Yeah, that's true.
Another question that we actually had before the webinar, which I think is good to handle, like how do you work with user roles within the company? We touched upon it before, but I think maybe coming in as new, it's a little bit difficult to know who to kind of place where. You, of course, have the admins who's supposed to do everything, but then we have other roles as well. So how did you go around that? And what was your thoughts about it?
So when it comes to user roles, so let's say specifically admins, we try to keep that to a minimum. So that means that basically only members of the legal ops or of the legal team and of the HR ops team, they are admins. So they're the ones that can do everything in the tool. But apart from that, we mostly work with other roles like managers who are like depending on the use case, but in most cases, those are like team heads who need to approve a contract, so we add them as managers. And all those who do not need to approve a contract, we basically keep them as members. And some of users are also viewers, maybe for some reporting reasons or so on. So this is how we split it. But then, of course, it depends also on the specific use case. Maybe we make an exception for a specific workflow that we have in place. But in general, we try to keep admin roles within the legal ops or people ops team.
Good. Yeah, and I think that's kind of a good rule of thumb to keep people as low as possible, so they don't do things that they shouldn't be able to do. But of course, then some people needs to have more authorization. We have another question from the chat, which is when creating the supplier contracts in the archive, how did you, Dani, manage to get the tagging of the legacy contracts done? And how was the search result on legacy contracts?
And so this is, like Fiona mentioned, this is a work in progress. It's something that we are doing now. So how we approach this is we, first of all, created a list of all the supplier contracts that we have. We identified contract owners, and we discussed on which metadata we actually want to track, like on a general level per contract. And based on that, we worked with Precisely on creating additional or customized metadata types. And we are now thinking of actually putting all those legacy contracts through a dedicated template. So just by answering the questions within that template, we will then be able to automatically track metadata for each contract. And this is how we want to then basically fetch metadata for all the contracts. And I would assume that then also like the search result quality should be good, but we are not there yet. So yeah, let's see. But I don't have any worries at the moment.
Yeah. And I think that's what you're mentioning with the templates is really cool, because the templates, you set the metadata on the template level, and then you can kind of use it both, of course, for generating an NDA or something, but also to upload and get the right information in. I know we do that for ourselves as well, asking the right questions regarding the contract, so the contract owner actually has to supply the information, which will then generate the metadata and notify the right persons that the contract has come in. There are a lot of functions that you can use for many things, and maybe not the thing that you think of initially, but that you learn that, hey, with my workload, this is going to work perfectly for this.
Exactly. Yeah. And maybe one more thing to mention, if we already talk about legacy contract or supplier contracts, and why I mentioned the contract owners and why it's important that we identify them. We want to also utilize the feature that's available in Precisely, where the automatic reminders are sent to the contract owners. And we would also like to, utilize this option and create reminders for the contract owners, for example, 4 or 3 months before a contract expires or auto-renews, that they get an email from Precisely that something is happening with their contract, and they can also then be accountable or take more ownership for that contract within Precisely.
Yeah, that's true. The reminders is also a game changer when it comes to notifying people about renewal dates, or even when a contract is signed, you can put a reminder like, hey, finance, a contract is signed, you need to check so you invoice this customer correctly, for example. So there are various ways to use it. Great. I see we have 1 minute, and it's been saying 1 minute for a while, so probably maybe 30 seconds. But thank you so much for joining. It's been a pleasure to speak with you as always. And thanks for everyone joining. I'm so happy that so many of you joined and that you engaged and had questions. If there is anything else, feel free to just reach out to us. We're available in the chat and Precisely by email. And I wish you a lovely rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Dani, for having us.
Thank you for having us.